Welcome to the shiny new podcast, Mad Mere, where we explore the challenges and victories to building a sustainable life and small artist. I'm Miriam Rachel, the host of Mad Mere, and today we'll be talking with our special guest, Jane Fischer, on how she built her business as an eco-conscious dressmaker. Let's get started. Jane Fischer, who also lives in the same co-housing community as I do, is an entrepreneurial dressmaker and owner of Janiette Post-Industrial. Her creations are made from repurposed clothing and fabric that would have otherwise landed in landfills. Jane has been in several local art fairs in the past 5 years here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, including the Edina Art Fair, the Wayzata Art Experience, the Highland Fest, and Excelsior on the Lake. Jane has also had her clothes in local retail stores, including the former Local Motion. Jane will be sharing with us how and why she decided to create her small business, the struggles and successes she's faced, and why she's decided to choose a different path away from Janiette Post-Industrial after 6 years. Janiette Post-Industrial can also be found on Instagram, so I encourage you to go check out Jane's work. Hello, Jane, and welcome to the Mad Mere podcast.
Hello, thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited to be.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you. So, tell us a little bit about how you led up to deciding that you wanted to start your business.
Yeah, it was such a organic path. I never meant to start like a business at all. I grew up sewing. I have always, all my life I've sewed since I've been a little kid. But then I kind of put it away for many, many years and raised my son and worked jobs and everything. And then I was going back to college actually to finish my bachelor's degree, which I've always wanted to do. And I took a creative problem solving class, and the class was pick a creative problem and do it and write about it. And I ended up, going to the thrift store and finding a Bowden dress. And I was like, I'm going to make a chic little dress out of this. And it didn't happen, but it just got me started on just making my own clothes. So it just kind of grew.
That's fantastic. And you said when you grew up that your parents didn't really have you watching TV and
Yes, very limited television. We could watch like The $6 Million Man and Little House on the Prairie,
yes, Little House on the
yeah,
Prairie.
yeah, but not the typical, like we couldn't watch like all the shows other kids watched after school.
Mhm.
It was, yeah.
That just kind of sounded like it gave you more time to do other things like creative
Yes.
endeavors
Yes.
and
I grew up in a family of 6 kids, and we just had lots of like space and materials and time. There was all this unstructured time. And us kids like did a lot of just kind of arty, just we were always just puttering around, writing things and drawing and sewing. So I basically just like grew up out of that, like very artistic like childhood. And I just kind of got a job, and I didn't, I just started like waitressing and stuff, working in restaurants, and I didn't know like about going to college. And so, yeah, so I didn't know like that there was a way that one could grow up and be like a clothing, I wouldn't have wanted to be in the designer like hierarchy anyways. But yeah, like I think I always assumed I'd be an artist, and then it just like didn't like happen.
yeah.
You have to take steps and do it, I guess.
Oh.
So, who knew?
Right. Now you
Um,
went to like sort of like a wealthier Catholic school.
I did college prep. Yeah.
I know you talked about sewing your own clothing. So,
Yes. We could wear like corduroys, but no jeans. And it was like a very, yeah, like kids were very wealthy, and like everybody like had clothes. And like we were like just a kind of a big family with no like budget for clothing. So me and my sister, my older sister, we got to the point where we were like sewing our own like corduroy jeans, with pockets and everything. And we would sew our own little Calvin Klein labels and sew them and put them on the back pocket, so that we had like Calvin Klein. I had a pair of like rose, like a dusky rose corduroy, wide well corduroy pair of like manufactured Calvin Klein jeans, handmade Calvin Klein jeans. And I love those. I wore those for a long time.
and then you said you had a Sasha doll.
Yeah, I don't have my Sasha doll with me, but yeah, I made my Sasha doll clothing. So that's what I did before I graduated up to my own real life people clothing, I would make doll clothes. I made a lot of doll clothes, and I made my Sasha a pair of jeans with real pockets and a real zipper fly and real back pockets and double stitching. So yeah.
I love like, I was so impressed by that pair of jeans, like, the stitching on it is so even. Like, I mean, you could, like, sell it in a store. I mean, it's
I
really
know.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, those are very cute.
So, one of the things that you were talking about with, wanting to become an artist and needing to take steps is sort of like starting to decipher between what is art and what is a craft, which is also like a huge philosophical question. How did that start to form for you?
Yeah, like I think that's probably why I sort of didn't think of myself as an artist when I was young, because I was like, I love to draw people, but I didn't consider that like it wasn't conceptual. Like I felt like there was like a um like at the time that I was growing up, I felt like there was a really big distinction between like pretty art and conceptual art, and that like real art had to be like conceptual. And so I felt really bad about that because I don't know, I don't have a concept that I'm trying to get across here.
Right.
And I just liked to so I didn't think of myself as an artist, and in that way. And I envied people who had like something to say. I mean, I was really pretty tortured about it when I was in my like sort of like late teens up into my like mid 20s. I was like kind of I thought about it a lot and just considered like, well, like am I an artist? And meanwhile, I was sewing still. I remember like I sewed boxer
Yeah.
shorts for me and my sisters and my friends and little tops, and I would sew my clothing still. I sort of gradually, as I got busier and busier and had to support myself more and more, and working, I sewed less and less, I guess, and
Yeah.
sort of lost track of that over the years. I remember starting a tablecloth dress. I found this and like a vintage tablecloth at a rummage sale, and I
Yeah.
was making a dress out of that when I got pregnant. And then somehow during all the, you know, that time of my life, I lost track of the dress. And years later, I'm still thinking about it as a white tablecloth with big, goldenrodish, mustardy yellow flowers.
Oh, I love that. One of the things I know we've talked about is like who gets stuff in MoMA and like where's that turning point where you're like, oh, I am an artist. My daughter basically woke up one day when she was 2 and was like, I'm an artist.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, she still identifies as that. And,
Yeah.
and like without having any of those barriers of like society to
Right.
like block that, So do you think that there was like a turning point for you where you felt like an artist or?
Like, I mean, at one point I did, because I've always like sketched people. Like that was what I liked to do. And so at some point when my son was young, I remember when he was a baby, I would draw him a lot. Like I
Oh,
had a lot of I was lucky enough to be home with him, for the first several years, like totally full time. And then I remember just like when he would sleep, I would draw him. And when his dad would like be holding him or whatever, I would just draw him. And so I have all these pictures of Finn as a baby, like that I would draw. And then it sort of
wow.
naturally like went from there that I was drawing a lot then, because I guess because I didn't have to work as much. And whenever like work relaxes and I don't have to like work at like some, like hamster wheel job, then I
Right.
have all this time, and then I just naturally start doing more like, drawing or sewing or whatever. And so I just ended up doing portraits at fairs, and that was like my
Yeah.
first craft fair experience. Was like I would take my easel that I found on the side of the road in Madison, and it was so nice, and I wish I still had it. And I would, just I would have like a pad of, like I think 14 by 17 drawing pad, and I would one charcoal pencil, not charcoal, but whatever pencil, and draw people. And
That's
then I would,
amazing.
yeah. And I think, and I would always be like, if you don't like it, you don't have to get it. And the very first person I drew didn't get it, but from then on, everybody else got it. So,
So it's just
um,
you just had to get past
yeah,
that
the
one person,
one.
just get it out of the way.
Yeah. So, and I've kind of lost that ability to draw people at this point in my life, and I don't know if I'll ever get it back.
Precious, like priceless gift to have like these hand drawing pictures of Finn, when
Yeah.
he's a baby and aw, I love that so much.
Yeah.
Um, So tell us a little bit of when you decided you would start to create dresses,
Mhm.
and especially with your upcycled materials that you use with your dresses.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like through much of my life just sort of being like kind of broke,
Yeah.
and I was like always a thrift shopper. And I remember just at one point before I had like a million dresses, I I like wanted a dress. I was like wanted to find like a cool dress. Like I had like a sort of image in my mind of the dress I wanted to find and I could never find it and I certainly couldn't buy it.
Yeah.
And so I think then when I started sewing like um kind of inspired by that class or like and by the stuff I was doing, I had a late start to work one day. I think I had to start at like 11 or something, 10:30 or 11. And I
Yeah.
woke up early in the morning and I just started cutting and sewing and I like quick sewed my dress and I wore it to work and it was made out of like old clothing, and it even has a little hole in it and stuff. But I was just making it for me.
Right.
And I remember like getting to work and being like, "Hey, I made this dress." And everyone was so nice about it, like, "Oh my God."
I'm sure it was amazing though.
Well, yeah. I mean, I wore it a little bit. I still have it. I don't really wear it anymore. I think I'd have to tweak it to like it. But so it just kind of grew from there. And then I made a dress for myself that I ended up giving to my sister. And then it just sort of grew. I just kind of kept making dresses. And then I ran like, it's too many for me. And so
Yeah.
then I started thinking about selling them. And then yeah.
I mean, I even think about, like, when we moved here, you had just made it was the gown
The kitty
that,
cat.
yeah, the kitty cat gown,
Yeah.
and I loved it. I remember being like, and I sew and I quilt, and so I
Mhm.
was very impressed by that. So
The cat gown is very special.
so to find materials, do you just kind of drive to Goodwill and, like, dig around and
Yeah, I started just to go to my local thrift store,
Yeah.
and then I started feeling like I wanted to be cutting up things that were no longer wearable because I was feeling like if this is going to be like if I'm going to call this at all green or in any way like an alternative to whatever, I don't want
Yeah.
to be cutting up things that are new and wearable and current and because that just there's just something that feels really bad about that to me. And so I ended up going to the Goodwill outlet and oh
Awesome.
my God, it's so much fun. And then I would get like Christmas turtlenecks turned out to be one of my best things.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I would dye them. So like, yeah, like so that I started dyeing in my bathtub, not as beautiful as your dyes
Oh,
by any
thank you.
stretch, but like just like a very simple modeled, like tossing dye and mushing it up with my hands in the tub, rinsing it out. That's kinda how it grew, I guess.
One of the things you've talked about is with fast fashion too is like
Mhm.
what would happen if countries just suddenly stop making fast fashion.
Yeah.
It could go like the other way too because it would prevent other countries from necessarily having economy and people, even though, there's probably like a lot of fast fashion workers that are not getting paid a fair wage, and I'm sure there's lots of child labor and
Yeah, for sure. It's just I don't know how to solve the problems of exploitation of people. I mean, there's levels of it everywhere in our work,
yeah.
but, I know I'm not the answer to it, and I know the answer isn't I feel like part of the answer would be, if people could sew their own clothes, if people can sew their own underwear, I mean, imagine what it would be like to not have that need anymore.
Right.
Like, or to not have the need. I mean, it'll never get to that point in our culture exactly the way it is now.
Yeah, no, you sew your own underwear, right?
I do sew my own underwear.
That's amazing.
It's awesome underwear. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, boy shorts. I just started doing it, and now it's like they're so much more comfortable than any other underwear I've ever worn.
Why would you go
I
back?
know,
Like
never. Yeah, and it's like I get happy if I sew myself a pair of underwear. I was having a really hard night one night. I was sad and feeling sorry for myself, and then I was like, I think I'll just make a pair of underwear because I need some. And then I did it, and they were so cute. And I
Aw.
just was like, wow. I think the like endorphins or whatever they are were just like flowing. And I was like, gosh, That's the secret to not being sad is
Right?
just like make something,
That's awesome.
make something you need. Yeah.
And, like, I think if I was, like, wearing, like, handmade underwear, I'd be like, "I am wearing my great underwear." Like, my confidence would just, like, even though nobody could see it, so
Right.
that's
Yeah. It
awesome.
does. Yeah, it is a nice, and they've evolved. My first pairs of underwear didn't like have elastic around the waist, so they'd always be slipping down. And now they've gone through a
Yeah.
little evolution, but
That's
yeah.
awesome. Well, I suppose, like, everything, like, you kinda start with, like, a prototype, and then eventually,
Yeah.
like, you evolve it, and eventually you land on what you like. Even with your dresses, I'm sure that you kinda started with a prototype and evolved.
Yeah, in fact, yeah, like my original dress was sort of like very like I started doing really pencily dresses,
Yeah.
and now I'm doing a little slightly A-line because it's like, like when you're wearing like a pencil dress that's tight at the knees, like you can't really like sit on the
Or,
ground or
like,
whatever. Like,
run.
yeah, yeah, right. And so I wanted them to be more wearable. And then this past year, I started incorporating pockets. It was like I didn't want to do it because it was a hassle. And
Right, right.
but then my sister-in-law was like, my sister-in-law Lisa is so great, and she bought a few of my dresses early on, and she was enthusiastic. She's like an enthusiastic like supporter of local art, and which is just one of
Oh,
the reasons why I love her.
I love that.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
awesome, and she like was like, if you could just put a pocket on the, and like if you could just like put a simple pocket there, then I could put my key there. Like when she's a teacher at the time, put my key
Yeah.
in the pocket, and I was like, yeah, I'm on it. And I'm like, then 3 years later, I'm like, yeah, sorry. And so I finally started making pockets, and now pretty much every dress I make with a pocket because I'm like, you know, it's an extra half hour of work
Yeah.
or whatever, but it adds so much practicality.
Well, I certainly appreciate pockets. So I know that you've experimented with other things too, like doing like the cutout back in your dress and
Yes. In the early days, I did cutouts. I did a lot of back cutouts, and I think I've tried side cutouts, maybe not. But yeah, and then I just haven't done a lot of cutouts lately.
I suppose not everybody, maybe doesn't want to have a cutout anyways. So
Right. And I
yeah.
wasn't sure how they would hold up to,
Yeah.
like people have to be very careful when I always tell people put it in a fabric bag when you wash it, and hang it to dry over the waist, like flop it over one of those,
Yeah.
dryer things.
Right.
And I'm like, never hang it by the shoulders. And then my friend who has like several of my dresses was like, well, I always hang them by the shoulders. I'm like, I told you not to.
Oh.
And I'm like, how can people do that? Like you're gonna stretch it out. And so that's the thing. So I don't wanna, even if I tell people how to take care of them, I don't want to give them something that might easily get ruined.
Right, right. Well, and I suppose with working with, repurposed fabrics, like, we have to take like extra good care of it. It almost becomes like more special because you have to be like delicate with it to like preserve it, you
Right.
know?
To preserve it, treat it with care. And
Right?
yet I want them to be
Right?
everyday dresses that you can just wear to
Totally.
the like, farmer's market or whatever. That was always the purpose of it, is just to have like your everyday stuff be fun.
Right? Right. Well, your dresses are definitely fun. So, yeah. And actually, you're wearing a really fun dress.
This is Sean. I don't know if you can see Sean, but I made this when I got into Edina Art Fair, like the first year I applied, which was such a wonderful thing. And I didn't realize like that was the only time I'd get into Edina Art Fair. So,
Yeah.
but I made this dress, and because I wanted something to put on a mannequin in front of my booth that would draw attention. And so
Yeah.
I was like, I know Sean Cassidy, because I always felt like he's from like when I was like 13, Sean Cassidy was like a big deal.
Yeah.
And I always thought he looked like me. Like I was like, I kind of look like him with a bowl cut and everything. And I made this dress and I priced it really high because I was like, I think I want it. Oh,
Yeah.
the funny thing about this dress was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, oh well, should I get into it? I
Yeah.
did the Edina Art Fair, and I had a few people bought dresses and they needed alterations. This one woman bought my Lion King dress and needed it taken in a bunch. So I get home and I'm so tired, but I'm so energized, and like on Sunday night or whatever. And I take the dress out of the bag and I just cut it down the sides. I'm like, I'm gonna get started right away. And then I realized I'd cut Sean.
Oh
I had cut
no.
this, and I was just like, when you imagine like the worst thing that you could possibly do in your
Right,
life, like the
right,
worst mistake you could make,
right.
I like got down on the floor and I like put my head in my hands and I just sat there for like 10
no.
minutes and I was like,
What did
no.
I do? As the rain pours down and the dramatic music happens.
It was like my greatest symphony is ruined. It was like, to me, this dress was like the opus of my life, right? Like it's like the best dress I've ever made. Of course, I was like, that was early on. But and then I finally just got up from the floor and I was just like, oh, well. And I just sewed it up again. And now it's smaller and it's a little tight, but I was just like, oh, well, that's the way it is. And so like, I think I had to re-put the bottom on and, and I was just like, note to self, don't look before you cut.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've totally done that before. That is so unfortunate when that happens.
It is.
Yeah.
But what is nice, I know I'm just going to segue into like, I have like loved being an artist so much because there's those huge ups. It's huge, like wonderful things. Like when somebody, finds their dress and they, like it's just so many wonderful moments that some of which I'll never forget. I'll never forget some of the ladies that have like bought dresses from me and it's just like the most wonderful feeling. Something that I made and I labored over in my little apartment and I thought about and I was like, I'll just do this and I'll make it this way. And it turns out to fit this person perfectly. Not only the way it fits, but the little things about it,
Right.
Like this woman was like, oh, it has bats on it and bats, whatever. Like it and then like the terrible moments of like, the rain and the tent blowing over and the cutting into your favorite John Cassidy dress. And it's like, it can't, compare. Like the life of an artist is just so full of like ups and downs. And it's like, I'm so grateful that I have had the life even for a short time.
Yeah.
It's the best.
Like every day is just kind of an adventure and
Yeah.
No, I think almost in a way like the people don't choose the dresses like choose the people. With their like personality and like their energy goes to a dress and like without them knowing and then they're like this is the one.
Yeah. And I'm still waiting to go out into the wild and see somebody wearing my dress. It has not happened to me. And then I'm like, are people just buying them and then like not wearing them? Like, I don't know. Do they like them? The only people I see in the wild are like my neighbors or my sister, and that's not the same.
Yeah. Although I know I was at Costco that one time with like my mom and I ran into your sister and I was like, that's a Jane dress.
Right. But that's my sister.
I know. But I didn't know that. I was like a Jane dress in the wild.
And and my sister does wear my dresses and that's awesome. But I'd love to see a real person, but I don't go anywhere. So that's probably part of it.
Yeah, that could, well, and, with COVID too, it's not like anybody's been like out and about like we used to be. So,
So true.
I know that there's been like some obstacles also, like you've talked about on your dressmaking journey. I know like art fairs alone are like a whole thing. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with that?
Yeah, like my huge obstacles are like I'm not that great with social media, like I post to Instagram and I sometimes would put it on Facebook. I'm really shy about things and I have like a sort of like an emperor's new clothes complex where I'm like, ugh. I worry about how people are people are gonna judge it or whatever. And I can go down rabbit holes of being like, the world doesn't need this or whatever. I don't know. So that's one obstacle is just my own feelings of like limitation.
Like kind of like a little bit of an imposter syndrome almost, which I mean, like as an artist, I've totally experienced that myself, like especially when I first started doing tie-dye, I was like, I don't know, is this like good enough to sell? And I think like also in society, like we're so used to like these standards and these norms. So when you're doing something different, there's sort of like oh no, it doesn't fit into any of these molds. Like I can't compare it. Like, should I be worrying about what people think about this?
I know. And it's like looking for approval from the people, like, and it's like, that is the hard thing. But then I think of the people that have bought from me and have really liked it and come back to me. Like, I think of this one woman who has bought several things from me and she comes to see me at like basically every art show, and it's such a good feeling. Like it's so
Yeah.
nice. It's like, and I have a couple of people who've like commissioned things, and a woman recently, and several people who have bought 2 dresses at a time. That's the best. The
Yeah.
best
Yes.
because it's like it makes me feel so good and
Affirms like your
um
hard work and
yeah. Oh
yeah.
yeah, but the obstacles for me, the biggest obstacle is like my sizing is very not standardized, and
Yeah.
like because like any particular dress I'd make, it depends on how much fabric I have to work with, and
Right.
that's it'll become, and then I'll think like I'll just feel like this one needs to be a little narrower here, a little wider here. And so that's not standard, but I just, in my mind, I think, people are all different shapes.
Right.
And then I think
Right.
the right person will find this dress, and I don't want it cut for the wrong person. I want it cut for that person.
Right.
And so, because of that, like those two things, one being the fabric determines how big the dress can
Yeah.
be or what
Yeah.
size the dress or how short it is or whatever. It's really because of those things, it's really difficult for me to sell online because it's like I
Right.
can't be
Right.
like for every dress be like, well, it's kind of a it's kind of a 6, but like a little bit of an 8 and
Right.
a little wider
Right.
here and a little narrower, and it's like
Right.
I feel like you really have to try them on.
Well, and I laugh because like standardized sizing, like at least in the US, you could have 8 different brands and have 8 different versions of a small, medium, large, etc., etc.
Yeah, so true.
Even though it's standardized, like
Yeah.
it's so not standardized too.
And I think people are also used to clothing being so mass produced and cheap.
Right?
And so, like,
Right?
if I send out a dress, like if I post it online or whatever and send it out, and I'm like, this is a, size X or whatever, and send it out, and the person tries it on, and maybe they put it on so they stretch out the neckline or something, and
Right.
then they send it back to me, and now it's kind of ruined. And I'm
Right.
like, oh,
Right.
I feel like I have not, I don't know how to resolve that.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you do though, like at art
Mhm.
shows where you have like an actual like dressing room, like a,
Yeah.
a pop-up thing that you like built that people can try on and like
Mhm.
take a look and see how they feel in it. And
Yeah.
in fact, I've used that dressing room before to try on
Yeah.
dresses at art fairs. So,
Yes.
and it's so cool. It's like a little fort like inside your like art fair tent.
It is nice. My brother actually built the most recent one, and it's so
Aw,
out of PVC, which is awesome.
right?
And yeah, it's important to have that good
Yeah.
mirror. I have a mirror inside usually, unless I forget it. So
Yeah, well, and I know like just with art fairs, like there's so much that goes behind the scenes too that people don't necessarily know about like small businesses. If you don't have people to help you schlep stuff or whatever, like you have to do all the work and like the weather and
it's so much work. It's so much. Yeah, you pay like $500 or $600 to get into an art fair, or not. And sometimes they're not that expensive, but generally, the bigger ones like $500 or whatever, and then so much work, so much setup,
yeah,
and so much whatever schlepping your stuff and from blocks away, parking, and it's
right?
like fun, and
Right,
there's a lot of
right,
like, kinship with the other artists, which is
right,
great,
right,
but it's a lot of work, and if it rains or is otherwise cold, like if it's cold, nobody wants to try on a dress, or if it's too hot. Like
right.
I've had fairs before where people are like, well, if it weren't so hot, I would try things on, and I'm like, oh, like it's
You're
like,
like, please
I
try it
mean,
on.
I don't want somebody who doesn't want my stuff to buy it,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
to buy it, but it is hard when your whole livelihood depends on the weather like that.
right.
It's like being a farmer or anything else.
Right. Well, I just think like too, like leading up to an art fair. I mean, anytime I've done an art fair, I spend at least 2 weeks like trying to decide what I want to bring with me because, because I can only fit so much stuff in my vehicle. And, like if I don't have help carrying, like there's only so much I can bring. And, there isn't always an elevator and you can't always drive up to like where your tent is at or where your spot is at.
So true.
And so, I mean, it's so hard. And then sometimes when you get there, like there's like regret, and then you have to like be like, no, I didn't bring the one thing, but
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I'm not gonna worry about it.
Mhm.
And I just think too, like the adrenaline that happens, like I don't think I've ever slept the night before a
Oh,
show.
yeah.
And even if it's over like a weekend, like I think about like Art Whirl last year, and I felt so grateful to be a guest of Denise Tennant's sculpture gallery. And I remember like not sleeping at all the night before. And then like the first night after I set up, I was like, I'm so excited, I can't sleep. And then by the time it was, Sunday and time to like tear down and everything, I was still like so filled with adrenaline, but I was so tired. And I think I needed like a month to like just sleep after
Right.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right. It's a lot of output.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing, like, you always have to be on when there's people around,
Yeah.
and yeah, and there isn't that time, like, even if your feet are hurting or you're tired or whatever, you haven't eaten in 6 hours
Yeah.
or had a bathroom break, like, you just have to put a smile on and just
Yeah.
like, I'm so grateful for those opportunities because I really think that it's really helped me grow as an artist
Mhm.
and sort of, like, get my name out there, but
Mhm.
it there's definitely, like, the other side to it too, where it's a lot.
And yet I do love them. And for me too, it's like a chance to like see like I've been working so hard all by myself.
Right.
And then I get to the art fair and then all these people will try on things and then I'll be thinking like, "Oh, what do I need to do in the future?" Like I
Totally.
realize, "Oh, I'm cutting these too narrow here or whatever." You know, just I
Right.
start to plan my next
Right.
run.
And I always think it's interesting too, like, I don't know if this happens to you, but like the things that I think will sell don't always sell. And then
Mhm.
like the things
Yeah.
that I least expect, people will be like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing.
Yeah, one of my dresses took like a couple years to sell, and that was the one that I thought, "Oh my god, that's gonna go right away," and it took a
Right?
couple years, and yet the
Yeah.
memory of it was like the woman who finally did end up with it was like the right person.
Right. And see, that's the thing. Like the dress just
Mhm.
has to find its right human.
It
Like,
does,
yeah.
yes, I do think that.
I feel kind of like the same way with the tie-dye stuff. Like
Yeah.
if it hasn't sold yet, like it just hasn't found its human yet. So as you became this dressmaker,
Mhm.
how did living in co-housing affect you, if it affected you at all?
Well, I mean, the built-in people that would share my enthusiasm was really nice, if I said that right. You know, like you guys came to see me, and that was really nice. I think I have a picture
Yeah.
of me
Oh, yeah, with the
with the
vodka.
vodka.
Yeah, when we,
Yeah, that
like,
was
first
nice.
moved in,
Yeah.
and she woke up, like, in the middle of the night, she's like, "We're going to the fair," and it was just like a farmer's market,
It was.
but she was, like, she put on her, like, dress with a tutu and
Yeah. I remember those tutus.
Right,
All those
right?
yeah, and that was really nice, and, Jennifer, came and bought a
Yeah.
dress at Edina Art Fair, and she still she would say, like, "I wear it on, special occasions," or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
and Tamira,
Oh,
who
yeah.
doesn't live here anymore, but, she had a dress for me, and she would still tell me, like, "I wear this for special occasions," and that was just so nice. It made me feel so good, and,
Right? There's one that I love that you made for her. Like, it looks like lined paper. I think it's kind of yellow with
yes,
like
yeah, that's the
yeah.
one.
Oh my gosh,
Mhm.
and it was, like,
Yeah.
made for her, like, it fits her personality, like,
Yeah.
again, like, the
Yes.
dress shows it's human.
And that was different that she was gonna choose a different dress, but then she ended up with that one. And then she was like, "I want it lower." I have to go recut the neckline for her lower, you know? And so, because I was like, at one point I felt like all my necklines were like so low, but I was like, I wanted the dresses to be sexy. But then at some point, Amelia, my son's then girlfriend, was like, she was like, try a different, neckline, and so then I
Yeah.
did, and that turned out to be a really good thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, but back to community. That's just all of that, like all
Yeah.
of the people that I could share it with, and like people to help me take pictures, and people that I could make. If I make a new dress, I'd run over to my neighbors and be like, "Look," and
Right?
that's really
Right?
nice. So
Right?
yeah, and I just love living in co-housing. So
When I remember once you had me model some dresses,
I
and, like,
did.
I specifically remember a red dress, and actually, I don't know if you know
Yeah.
this. So, I was working as an orchestra director at the time,
Mhm.
and we had just gone to our solo ensemble competition for our section in Minnesota, and one of the adjudicators that was there,
Mhm.
who is just fantastic, and I'm still friends with her to this day, and she was like, "That was a pretty sassy dress you were trying on the other day." Like, people notice those things. Like one thing I've really loved about your dresses too. I mean, I even have a dress from you and I still like pull it out and wear it like to work and stuff and I get compliments. With being a small artist, like other small artists, like we really have to like uplift and like help each other out because I mean, we're all like kind of dependent on each other in a way. Like we wouldn't be able to have the art fairs without everyone being able to find success. And
I agree. I don't feel competition.
even in the tie-dye world, I mean,
Yeah.
first of all, like I know that I'm kind of spoiled in the tie-dye world because 99% of people are so cool and so accepting no matter what level you're at. And I mean, I can't say that there isn't drama, but like it's so much less, I think, than in general. Like I've only ever had like maybe one bad experience, and that was just when somebody copied my work blatantly. And outside of that, everybody is just so, hey, we should be friends. Like, hey, you work with tie-dye too. And, like I don't feel like there's a ton of gatekeeping, And if I've ever had a question on like a fold or a color or something, I've 100% of the time, if I've messaged them or commented, on their post or something, I always get an answer. I just feel like that's so great and it's so necessary. The other thing too with tie-dye, and I'm sure this is kind of similar with your dresses, is like it's not like I can make 8 shirts that are going to turn out exactly the same because there's no way, especially with ice dye, like you can't control how the ice is going to melt. You can't control how the dye is going to flow into the fibers. It's sort of like left up to the universe in a way, like in a way that takes away like some of the competition because everything is going to be so unique no matter what. And I definitely think your dresses fall into that category. So
Yeah. Well, thank you.
yeah. So tell us a little bit about thinking about at least taking a pause, like you're not sure if you're going to continue and all of that.
Yeah, like, I mean, I put on Sean for this because I'm like, well, I got to wear my
Aw.
dress. Like, I was thinking about this, like how, what changed. And I realized COVID happened. I'm not sure if I was waning already when COVID happened. I don't
Yeah.
know. Or if I was just at a point where I was like, like, what direction am I going to go in? I know that I was finding that the outdoor fairs near lakes were getting really difficult because the wind, it's windier now than it used to be. At
Yeah.
least I think. Like, my impression was that weather's getting more unpredictable.
Our weather patterns have definitely changed here.
Yeah, it seems like it. And I don't know if it's just a fluke, if I just happen to get calm days in the last, 5 years and then the last or like before the last 3 years that I was getting calm days, but I just, pretty much had smooth sailing then. I'd put my tent up, I'd come back in the morning and I'd have a fair and, hopefully it wouldn't rain.
Right.
And now it's like I had to get new weights for my tent. One of my tents like collapsed in the middle of the
Oh my
night.
gosh.
And like there would be such wind by my favorite art fair. My favorite art fair is right on the lake, and I go every year. And this last time I went, it was so windy that I was like holding onto my tent all day long as the wind blew.
Oh my
And it
gosh.
was like I just was like I can't do this. Like this is
Right?
not like sustainable for me. And so
And stress too. I mean,
so much stress and things blowing and just constantly running around, it was just not a great, it was just a little too much. And
yeah.
so I was kind of like just rethinking, like, am I gonna start doing maybe a retail store? But the thing is, I like to be there. I don't want to like give my glasses to some retail store and then be
Right.
like, and just like have people buy them. Like, I want to be there and be like, nope, that one doesn't fit you. That's what's really
Yeah.
important to me is the fit of it for somebody. Like, I want to be part of that process too.
Yeah.
So I haven't really found, like I said, like the whole thing with the indoor markets, that's my perfect situation. And so if somebody would just make that happen, that would be great. But so COVID happened and people, like that just changed everything immediately drastically. Like I think,
Yeah.
there are some people that were just like, well, I'm never going to wear jeans again. Why
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
I? Why would I wear anything but the softest sweatpants?
Right?
And so I also felt like, nobody was really going anywhere. We were all kind of staying inside and nobody like needs a dress. And I didn't know how long that was going to go on. And I just was like, didn't feel like in step with the world anymore.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, and then going forward, I do like now I have a job and I have a job. And so like now I don't really have the time anymore to make things like I used. I mean, I could make the time, but
Well, and financially, I feel like being a small artist is such a you have to be able to sustain financially because you have to be able to take care of yourself. And, if you can't sustain, especially like during COVID times, even with the economy right now with inflation, people are having to cut back. I mean, even us, like we didn't buy apples last week because they were absolutely ridiculously priced. And we can only work with what we have. And I think a challenge, even with, trying to get my own business up, going and, with people having the same amount of pay and higher bills to pay. I mean, even here, just in St. Louis Park, like I know our cost of living has gone up over 30% in the last couple of years. It's been a haul.
My original idea when I first started making things was like, I wanted to form some kind of like collective, makers collective. I
Yeah.
would get together with other people and teach sewing. So that was my original idea. And then at some point I was like, well, I guess I'll do art fairs for now. And then teaching that kind of stuff will come in the future. And so, because the idea wasn't always like, I mean, I put so much time into a dress that it's just not the same. It's not like, it's not going to be priced like H&M because like
Right.
otherwise I'd be making like $2 an hour
Right.
and we of course exploit people who make very little money.
Right.
But I guess my point is like I wanted to set people free by teaching them to sew because you are like really free when you know how to sew. You can fix your clothes, you can alter them, you can make them work, and it's
Right.
so exciting. In fact, I follow a lot of people on Instagram who are sewists or whatever. You can't say sewer because then it's like sewer, right? But like,
Oh.
and especially men who sew. Like I follow a fair amount of
Yeah.
men who sew. And what I love is like seeing people who are learning how to sew as adults, and it's
Right.
new and they're learning it and they're so enthused and they're sewing these extravagant things and like with a lot of variety. Like there's like a structured dress and a crop top and leggings and this and that. And they're showing all this stuff and I'm just focusing on my one thing. And I think,
Yeah.
and in a certain way, like I did all that exploration when I was younger. So I feel a little sad that I'm not experiencing that right now because
Yeah.
it's because I just love seeing people learning how to sew. So I'd love to be part of that if I structure of that right now.
Well, and I feel like there's almost like a honeymoon period too,
Yeah,
like when
there
you're
is.
learn a new skill
There is.
and then eventually like it kind of like you find the stuff of that you like and then get into like the real relationship. Maybe have an argument once in a while with a garment.
Right, yeah.
But
I mean, yeah, but I follow this guy who makes his own pants, his own jackets, his own
yeah.
structured shirts with collars and buttons, and it's just like, oh, that's so awesome. I love that people are doing it and they're sharing it, and more people are interested in it. I mean, I
Absolutely.
heard that like sewing machine sales like really went up during COVID. I mean, partly because
Yeah.
people wanted to make masks, but I
Yeah.
think also because like people were inside and they weren't, out doing stuff and
Yeah.
people started to explore like, baking and cooking and sewing and all these like nice homey things. And in some ways it was like, it was like the silver lining of COVID. I mean, I have to say for me, it was like a lot of silver lining because I
Yeah.
love being home.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I mean, for me, that's how I got started really with the tie dye. Yeah. Cause I was looking for, things to do with Avadia. And I was watching all these like YouTube videos on ice dye. And I was like, that's something we could try. And then, with living in a co housing community, I think I sent an email out and I was like, who wants an old t shirt tie dyed? That's when I started experimenting. And then it just grew.
amazing. That it was just
Yeah.
an idea of like, what can I do with Avadia as like a
Right.
fun activity
Right.
to
Totally.
do an art project with my daughter. That is so great.
Right? Well, and she's so creative. I mean, she's more of like a drawer and a painter and a sculptor.
Yeah.
I mean, her work is ridiculously good for a 10-year-old. I can't even believe that that's my kid sometimes. Even she like inspired me, cuz she would like when we were doing the shirts together, like she would pick out like a palette and she would say, "I want this to be, a daffodil sunset," or,
Mhm, yeah.
and like
Right.
we would, and then she would pick out colors and I would help her, place the colors and all that. COVID, I think for me was really stressful just because of so much like unknown. And we were doing distance learning, which, gosh, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. Like that was horrible. And then I was trying to like work my job at the same time. So, I mean, between distance learning and the amount of homework that they had to keep up, plus like working, like I was just it felt like I was on a hamster wheel,
Yeah.
but the one really good thing that came out of it for me was definitely the tie-dye.
We had very different experiences. Just not envy parents during that
No,
time.
it's been a wild ride, man. It's been a wild ride.
Right.
If you could give yourself any advice in retrospect, what would you give yourself?
Right. All of a sudden, this line from like, I think Saturday Night Live just popped into my head. I remember my brother-in-law used to say this. He would quote the Saturday Night Live thing was like, "Get confident, stupid," and like it's just like I wish that there was a way to like tell my younger self to like like it's okay, you can be confident, you're okay or whatever, because I think that I've struggled with a lack of confidence like all my life, and so that's definitely held me back in so many ways. But maybe I could have told myself just to trust my own like vision.
Yeah.
Although honestly, I do think things worked out really well during the past 5 years. Like, I think I was, for the most part, able to follow my vision and not get thrown off too much, but I did get a lot of, like, advice from people, and to be fair, I was probably, like, asking for it, like, "What do you think I should do? What do you think I should do?" Because,
Right.
like, I didn't know, and so then, people would say things to me like, "See what other people are doing. Look at what other people are doing," and I was like, "No, I don't want to. I don't wanna," like, I really don't wanna see what other people are doing in many ways,
Yeah.
because I don't wanna be influenced by that.
Right.
I don't wanna be like I don't wanna see what somebody else is doing and then be like, "Oh, no, now I have to change mine because it's too much like theirs,"
Right.
or maybe
Right.
mine isn't like a like theirs more or something, and, I really wanted to just, like, to just focus on what I'm doing and perfect what I'm doing.
And like trust yourself, like that like you are doing what you're supposed to be doing with your art and it's
Yeah.
working and it's good and like feeling good about it and
Yeah, just like finally, like the perpetual frustrated artist has an outlet, like woo, and that's like I am just like beyond so grateful for that time in my life, and I really don't know what's next. I am just kind of
yeah.
obsessed with relearning accordion at this point.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I love that as a side note.
I mean, I'm doing like baby. Like I
Yeah.
really honestly just had my first lesson this past week, and I'm
Yeah.
honestly like I took lessons when I was 25, but I'm on baby. I'm on the very beginning, like burm, burm, burm. I'm just
Yeah.
basically learning the notes and just even the 5 notes, not even the, eight
Yeah.
or whatever. So that's just fun. And I also think it's good to step away and do other things and, come back. Maybe I'll come back someday with fresh ideas or fresh
Right.
motivation and
And I think it's okay too to like with being, like an orchestra director and like doing music literally every day of my life since I was like 4, and then to be like, what do I want to do next? Like I think it's okay to give ourselves permission to like do other things and have other talents and pursue other things and like you don't have to define yourself as the one thing. Like when you wake up in the morning, you are not Jane dressmaker, dun dun dun.
Yeah. However, not for all eternity for
Yeah,
sure.
right.
But I remember during my time of like before the Edina Art Fair, I worked day and night. Like I would wake up in the morning and work, 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 work.
Yeah,
Sometimes I'd be sewing until like 10 or 11 at night. Not every night.
yeah.
But I was like a workaholic and I didn't want to do anything else. And I didn't go anywhere really. I didn't want to hang out with people. I just wanted to I mean, this to me, this was like I felt like this was my art opening, like
Yeah,
Edina Art
yeah.
Fair, and I was treating it like that, and I was just, and I think that's okay too. And I mean,
Totally,
I might have
absolutely.
gotten criticism like you're working too hard, and it's like just if you're into it, just do it,
Right?
like
Well,
work at it. That's how you get good is that you work, 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 and
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. And I think you have to like go with that like energy, like
yes,
if you are feeling that energy,
yeah.
like sometimes I think our best work comes out of that, you
Yes,
know?
absolutely. I believe that. 'Cause,
Yeah.
yeah, I was just, like, very purposeful and frenzied. But,
Yeah.
like and
Yeah.
I was so happy. I was just so driven and so happy and
I think that's fantastic. And I think too, like, I mean, I think about like, I get to do music and tie dye
Mhm.
and my day job that I have, like, it's so flexible and I'm so grateful. And like, my happiness has improved so much from that. And if there's anything I've learned from taking on the tie dye and even just like knowing you and watching like your whole process is just how happy it's made me. Like, it's increased my
Mhm.
happiness. And
Yeah, that's so good.
I think about like if we lived here, I don't know if I would have ever, found out that I love tie dye and I'm good at it. I don't know, the universe just lined up.
Yeah. Right. And I'm trying not to put any stress on myself either, like, but I know something will come along
Yeah.
that I'll get obsessed with and start doing, and I don't exactly know what that'll be.
Yeah.
Sometimes I still feel like there's dresses still that I want to make like in my
Yeah.
mind, and I still
Yeah.
feel like I want to do that, and I could totally see myself happily being like a dressmaker till the end of time, a little old lady dressmaker. Like that would be amazing. And so, if I could work out the other pieces about like how to get them on people.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm
Right.
actually like excited about what's going to happen next, but also
Yeah.
kind of enjoying the downtime, and enjoying the time
Definitely.
of not being obsessed with something.
No, I think it's definitely good to rest. And I think when we rest, like everything that we did kind of like marinates in our brain,
Yeah.
so that if and when we come back to it, I feel like I'm better when I come back after a break.
There's nothing like the new beginnings that are just they're so exciting.
Right? Well, Jane, thank you so much for being on the Madmere podcast. It's been,
It's been so exciting.
I'm so grateful and so appreciative. Janiette Post-Industrial can be found on Instagram, and I encourage you to go check out Jane's work. As always, you can find me on madmeredye.com, and Madmere will be back next week with a fresh podcast where we will continue to explore the challenges and victories to building a sustainable life as an independent small artist. First podcast recorded!